I'm now going to read you chapter 16 from Ratburger, which is the Blackberry bush. Nature finds a way to create life everywhere. In a smelly alleyway that connected the road to Zoe's estate, among all the crisp wrappers and empty beer cans, stood a proud little blackberry bush. Zoe loved the blackberries. They were like free sweets. She was pretty sure Armitage would like them too. She picked a large one for herself and a little one for her furry friend. Carefully, she placed the baby rat onto the wall. As Armitage watched, Zoe put the blackberry into her mouth and started chewing enthusiastically and making appreciative noises. Then she took the smaller blackberry between her thumb and forefinger and held it out towards him. Armitage must have been hungry because slowly he stood up on his hind legs to greet it. Zoe was delighted. The rat took the blackberry between his front paws and nibbled it greedily. It was gone in seconds. Soon he was looking longingly up at Zoe for another one. She picked another off the bush and held it up just above his nose. Without hesitation, Armitage stood up on his hind legs again. Zoe moved the blackberry around and he followed it around on his back legs. It was as if he was doing a little dance. "What a talented fellow you are," said Zoe as she gave him the blackberry. Once again he ate it greedily, and Zoe stroked the back of his neck. "Good boy." Inside she was buzzing with excitement. Armitage could be trained. Better still, it was like he wanted to be. He got the idea of standing up even quicker than Ginger Nut had. Soon Zoe was plucking as many blackberries as she could off the bush, just as she had with her hamster. She began teaching Armitage some tricks. There was the walk, the jump, the hop on one leg, the wave, and the dance. There we go. There's Armitage doing all his tricks. Soon the bush was bare, and Armitage looked rather stuffed and tired. Zoe knew it was time to stop. She whisked him up in her arms and gave him a kiss on his nose. "You are amazing, Armitage. That's what I will call you when we perform together on the stage. The amazing Armitage." Zoe skipped down the alleyway. Her heart was dancing, as were her feet. It was only when Zoe reached her estate that the spring in her step vanished. Not only would she have to tell her stepmother that she was suspended, she'd have to come up with some explanation as to why. The whole episode would give her stepmother a reason to make Zoe's life even more of a living hell. And what was a million times worse, a reason to end the little rat's life. A life that had only just begun. As Zoe approached the great leaning tower block, she noticed something peculiar. Bert's burger van was parked right outside her towering block of flats. In the many years she had lived there since her mother had died, she had never ever seen the van there before. It was only ever parked outside her school. "What on earth is that doing there?" she thought. Even from a distance, the smell of fried meat was stomach-churning. However hungry Zoe was, she had never bought a burger from Bert's van. The stench alone was enough to make her want to projectile vomit. The ketchup was decidedly iffy too. Passing the van, she noticed how disgustingly grimy it was. Even the dirt was dirty. Zoe ran her index finger along the chassis, and a splodge of sludge an inch thick came off in her hand. Perhaps Bert has just moved into the block of flats, she thought. She hoped not, though, as he was seriously creepy. Bert was the sort of man your nightmares had nightmares about. The tiny flat was high up on the 37th floor, but the lift always stank. You had to hold your breath in there, which wasn't easy over 37 floors, so Zoe would always take the stairs. Armitage was safely lying in her blazer pocket, and she could feel the weight of his tiny body bounce against her heart with every step. Her breathing grew louder and louder as she ascended the building. The stairs were littered with all kinds of rubbish, from cigarette butts to empty bottles. The steps stank too, but not as much as the lift, and of course you weren't so closed in. As usual, by the time Zoe reached the 37th floor, she was completely breathless and panting like a dog. Zoe stood outside the front door for a moment, pausing to catch her breath before she put her key in the lock. The headmaster, Mr. Grave, would no doubt have called her parents to tell them their daughter had been suspended. Within seconds, Zoe was sure to let loose her stepmother's fury, a fury no doubt more rabid even than the hounds of hell. Zoe silently twisted the key and reluctantly pushed the rotting door open. Even though her stepmother rarely went out, the TV was off and Zoe couldn't hear anyone in the house. So she tiptoed across the hall to her bedroom, being careful to avoid the squeaky floorboards. She turned the door handle to her room and stepped inside. A strange man was standing in her bedroom, facing the window. "Ah!" Zoe screamed, startled. Then the man turned around. It was Bert. Chapter 17. I Smell a Rat. "I smell a rat," wheezed Bert. Except it wasn't Bert. Well, it was Bert, but he had drawn a moustache on his face, very poorly with a marker pen. "What on earth are you doing here?" said Zoe. "And why have you got a moustache drawn on your face?" "It is a real moustache, my dear," said Bert. He breathed heavily when he spoke. His voice matched his face. They had both stepped out of a horror film. "No, it's not. You've drawn it on." "No, I haven't." "Yes, you have, Bert. My name is not Bert, child. I am Bert's twin brother." "What's your name then?" Bert thought for a moment. "Bert." "Your mum had twins and called them both Bert?" "We were very poor and we couldn't afford a name each." "Just get out of my room, you creep." All of a sudden, Zoe heard her stepmother pound along the corridor. "Don't you dare speak to the nice pest control man like that," she screeched as she waddled into the room. "He's not the pest control man. He sells burgers," protested Zoe. Bert stood between them with a smirk on his face. It was impossible to see what his eyes were doing because his wraparound sunglasses were black as the deepest, darkest oil. "What are you talking about, you stupid girl? He catches rats," shouted Zoe's stepmother. "Don't you?" Bert nodded silently and smiled, flashing his ill-fitting false teeth. The little girl grabbed her stepmother by her thick, tattooed forearm and led her to the window. "Look at his van," she declared. "Tell me what's written on the side." Sheila looked out of the grimy window to the vehicles parked down below. "Bert's Pest Control," she read. "What?" said Zoe. She wiped some of the smudges off the window and peered out. The woman was right. It did say that. How was it possible? It looked like the same van. Zoe looked over at Bert. His smirk had widened. As she watched, he took a dirty little brown paper bag out of his pocket and picked something out of it. Zoe could have sworn whatever he put in his mouth was moving. Could it have been a cockroach? Was that this depraved man's idea of a snack? "See," said Bert, "I'm a rat catcher." "Whatever," said Zoe. She turned to her stepmother. "Even if he is, which he isn't because he's a burger van man, why is he in my bedroom?" she demanded. "He's in here because he heard at school that you brought a rat into your lessons," replied her stepmother. "It's a lie," said Zoe, lying. "Then why did I get a call from your headmaster today, eh? Eh? Answer me, eh? Tell me everything, you disgusting little girl." "I don't want any trouble, my dear," said Bert. "Just hand the little creature over." He held out his grubby and gnarled hand. Bert had a dirty old cage on the floor by his feet that looked like it was made from a metal basket from a deep fat fryer. Only instead of using it to fry chips, he had squashed hundreds and hundreds of rats into it. At first glance, Zoe thought the rats were dead as they weren't moving. On closer inspection, she realised that they were alive. It was just that they were packed in so tight they could hardly move. Many looked like they could hardly breathe either. They were all so squished in together. It was a sickening sight, and Zoe wanted to cry at the shocking cruelty of it. Just then, Zoe felt Armitage wriggling in her breast pocket. Perhaps he could smell fear. The little girl discreetly brought her hand up to her breast to hide the wriggles. Her mind was racing with potential lies before she arrived at one. "I set him free," she said. "The headmaster is right. I did bring a rat into school, but I set him free in the park." Just ask Raj. He told me to do it. You should go and look for the rats in the park, she added, suddenly cupping Armitage through her blazer pocket, as the little rodent was squirming like crazy now. There was a deathly pause, then Bert sneered. You are lying, my dear. I'm not, said Zoe a little too quickly. Don't lie to the nice man, bellowed Sheila. We can't have another filthy, disease-ridden creature running around the flat. I'm not lying, protested Zoe. I can smell it, said the vile man, his vile nose twitching. I can smell a rat from miles away. Bert sniffed the air, then wheezed. Baby ones smell especially sweet. He licked his lips, and Zoe shuddered. There's no rat here, said Zoe. Hand it over, said Bert. Then I'll give it a quick whack with this special high-tech rodent stunner. He produced a bloody mallet from his back pocket. It's painless, really. They don't feel a thing. Then he can join his friends for a nice play in here. Bert indicated the cage by kicking it hard with the heel of his dirty boot. Zoe was horrified, but composed herself before she spoke. You are quite wrong, I'm afraid. There is no rat here. If it comes back, we will of course call you immediately. Thank you. Hand it over, now, wheezed the sinister man. Meanwhile, Sheila was studying the stepdaughter she loathed intently and noticed the awkward positioning of her left hand. You vile creature, accused the woman as she yanked her stepdaughter's hand away. It's in her blazer. Madam, you hold her down, directed Bert. I can whack the rat through the cloth. There'll be less blood on the carpet that way. No, screamed Zoe. She tried to wrestle her arm away from her stepmother, but the woman was a lot bigger and stronger than her stepdaughter. The little girl lost her balance and crashed to the floor. Armitage wriggled out of her pocket and started scurrying across the steps. Ah, screamed her stepmother. Get it away from me. Trust me, he won't feel a thing, wheezed Bert as he got down on his hands and knees, brandishing the bloody mallet. His nose twitched as he chased the rat around the room, whacking the implement onto the floor, missing Armitage by millimetres. Stop, screamed Zoe. You'll kill him. She tried to make a charge at the man, but her stepmother held her back by her arms. Come here, you little beauty, whispered Bert as he brought the mallet crashing down repeatedly onto the dusty carpet, plumes of ingrained dirt now exploding into the air with every thwack. Armitage scurried this way and that, trying desperately to avoid being whacked. The mallet walloped down, just catching his tail. Eek! Squealed the rat in pain, and he dashed off to hide under Zoe's bed. This did not deter Bert, who, without taking off his dark glasses, got down onto his belly and slithered under the bed like a snake, flailing his mallet wildly from side to side. Zoe writhed out of her stepmother's grasp and launched herself onto the man's back as soon as he appeared from under the bed. The little girl had never hit anyone before, and now she had leapt astride his back like a cowboy on a bull at an American rodeo, thumping his shoulders with all her might. Within seconds, her stepmother yanked her off by her hair and pinned her against the wall before Bert disappeared under the bed again. Zoe, no! You're an animal, you hear me? An animal, screamed the woman. Zoe had never seen her stepmother so uncontrollably angry. Muffled under the bed, Zoe could hear thud after thud of the mallet crashing down on the carpet. Tears were streaming down the girl's face. She couldn't believe her beloved little friend was going to meet such a violent end. The whack! And then there was silence. Bert wriggled out from under the bed. Exhausted, he sat on the floor. In one hand he held the bloody mallet. Between the fingers of his other hand he held a lifeless Armitage, dangling by his tail, before announcing triumphantly, "Gotcha!"